Peace and positivity, everyone. It's Takesha of Native Nubian Wellness, and you're watching another session of Black Women Who Blaze, a platform who provides a safe space for Black women to consume, commune, and collaborate, and provides visibility of us in the cannabis space. Today's featured guest is, a wonderful connection that I made via social media. And I'm so glad that you reached out. She is international. She is a cannabis chef, educator, and advocate who takes a low THC approach when cooking with cannabis. Grateful for the plant and its benefits, Necole founded Faded Living to connect people to the magic of herbs and work to normalize the use of cannabis. She helps to break down the stigmas with infused cooking workshops, recipes, dining experiences, and her podcast, Faded Living and Friends, which I'm excited about as well. Nicole's passion for the plant allows her to create a faded lifestyle. I love that. That brings balance, wellness, and enlightenment and change. Thank you, Necole Hines, for joining me today. I appreciate your time. How are you? How you doing this morning?
I am doing so well, Takesha. Thank you so much for having me on your platform. Good morning, everyone.
So let's get started with where you're located because I did say you are international. So where on the planet do you reside?
Yes, I am in Canada and I am in Vancouver, BC. So I'm on the west coast of Canada right now.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
so we, are aware, some of us are aware that in the industry, but is Canada adult use? Is it fully legal throughout the whole country? How are
Yeah.
you able to access the plant?
For sure. So it is federally legal on the medical and adult use or recreational side. So from coast to coast, it is completely legal to consume cannabis. So you can access it in many different ways. We have, of course, dispensaries that also many of them now offer delivery service as well. And then if you're a medical patient, you can also access the dispensaries, just because the products are in many cases the same. Or you can also purchase online directly through a licensed producer, and then you can make your
Wow.
purchases there. Yep. And then they get delivered to your home.
Right, right, right. Now I like that concept of being able to go direct to consumer if you're a producer instead of,
Yes.
having a third party. It's nice to have your products and things if you want in a dispensary so, everyone can get, but it is also a good idea, especially for medicinal patients and people who need it on a consistent basis and not just, oh, what do I feel like today? But they want some consistency in their product to be able to go directly to the producer. I
Mhm.
think that concept is something that here in the US they should consider. Um, as they begin to, the states begin
Roll things out.
yeah,
Exactly.
yes, yes, yes. And so I love the faded living and
Yeah.
concept. Like, just the we understand that, the slang of being faded.
Faded. Exactly. Live
Like,
that life all day, every day. I mean, honestly, my whole thing has been like, well, the plant has been so magical to me on so many levels, right? And I've been consuming for like decades, at least over 25 years, but my connection with the plant has been different throughout the years, right? So in the beginning stages, it was like, experimentation, and it was like all about the fun. And as time progressed, I realized like all cannabis use is really therapeutic use, to be honest with you. Like, in my opinion, like I am sometimes using it because I have pain in my back. Sometimes I'm using it because I want to relax. Sometimes I'm using it because I want to get creative. Sometimes I'm using it because I just want to have fun. Like, there's just so many elements to the plant that I do quite love. Um, and so the concept of the business is to show people that you can create a lifestyle around the plant. And it isn't just only getting quote unquote high, but it is the fact that you can consume the cannabis topically. To me, a topical is still consumption in some form, right? Your skin is still getting the benefits. You are getting some reprieve for whatever the reason is, right? And you can consume it by drinking it, you can consume it by wearing it. Like, let's not forget that hemp is part of the family.
Yeah.
And you can wear hemp clothing. You actually can build structures and homes with hempcrete. So that's the whole idea, is that I'm all about creating the lifestyle where I would love to be in, I would love to come to a position where my home is built like out of hempcrete. A lot of the linens and clothing that I wear is hemp. And then, of course, I'm consuming the plant, not just in its dried form, but in its fresh form too.
Yes, yes, yes. And that it just opens up, so many different pathways for people to be involved in, they would say, the cannabis space and industry. Even if you are an interior designer, or textiles, those type of designs, you design clothes. Just being more aware now of the times where I was creating hemp jewelry,
Yeah,
and using hemp seed oil, and not really associating it with, cannabis, because of how they, I would say, purposely separated it to make it seem as if it wasn't the same plant and in the same family.
right,
So
right.
but so yes, to be able to speak to that under the umbrella of faded living and all these different ways to incorporate it in your life, is definitely important and a good idea.
Yeah, thank
So
you. And I actually, like, one of the main, like, things that I focus on the most is food, because I find that food speaks to a lot of people. People aren't usually afraid of food, and it, speaks to people who are brand spanking new, who want to get connected to the plant. And then also for people who have been consuming for many years, sometimes this is something that they want to try out as well. So that's one of the reasons why I started off with food, because it isn't as scary. I think that there's still a lot of stigma, even in a country that is federally legal. There is still a lot of people who are following the old narratives of the plant. And, when they used to call it the devil's lettuce and all that kind of stuff, like, there are people who still believe that narrative. And so I find that with food, and especially working with low THC, it's a great introduction to the plant. And then understanding that it's kind of up to you to create your relationship with the plant.
right.
Not everybody consumes in the same way. We all have our own endocannabinoid system, which means that each individual interacts with cannabinoids differently, right? So it's one of those, it's something where you actually get to take control of how you want it to work with you, as opposed to, being prescribed something and then just consuming it based on what somebody else told you to do.
Right, right. And even in that, the way prescriptions are given, opioids or whatever prescription meds, is still flawed because, even if you're not talking about cannabis specifically in your endocannabinoid system, you know that each person is an individual. So
Right.
to be, prescribing something, a general blanketed prescription for everything that you have to offer someone's condition is, to me, flawed.
Okay.
So just learning, I think I guess, traditional medicine industry can learn from how people consume cannabis. They can see how, okay, now that they're becoming more aware of the ECS, which is
Mhm.
the endocannabinoid system, now that, it'll help them to see that, okay, being that this system kind of regulates all the other systems in our bodies,
Mhm.
and this person is coming to me with a circulatory issue, and I'm going to prescribe something specific to that. Let me help them identify some areas in their ECS that may be deficient, and
Right.
ways to bring that into balance with cannabis and without. You know, there's ways to balance it with and without. And so I love that you journeyed into infusing food as well, because yeah, it is scary. People are scared of edibles as well, and I've noticed, you know.
Yeah, I found that people are really scared of edibles, but I realized that like edibles and cooking with cannabis in my brain usually has like two different intentions. You
Yes.
know, I find that edibles, at least like back in the day, edibles, it was to get you really lit, really high. Like, you know, if you think of like stories about like, you know, brownies, infused brownies or cookies, you know, like back then, like, you know, you're really tasting the cannabis. And trust me, I do love the taste of cannabis in food. I don't try to mask it, but I do remember back in the day that that was the intent of an edible, right? Like it was like you get this one cookie and it's going to be jacked up with cannabis and you're just going to be like on another plateau. Whereas my whole approach to it is like, because regardless if you've been a consumer for 50 years or 40 years or whatever, or you just started, eating does affect everybody differently as well, because I mean the cannabis is processed differently, like it's going through your liver, I believe, right? So it is going to affect everybody differently. Some people don't get affected at all, some people are super super sensitive even though they can smoke all day every day and
Yes.
things of that nature. So the whole cooking concept is like, I'm not cooking with it every day to get lit every day, right? Like it's part of my nourishment. I'm not trying to overindulge there, but it does, adding a little to it, and even, you know, creating dishes with CBD, I feel like it's super therapeutic for me, and it does create a layered effect for somebody who does smoke all the time.
Right.
So it gives you a little bit of that body kind of comfort is what I like to call it. While, you know, when I smoke, like I said, you know, I do it for so many different reasons, but sometimes I'm smoking even just to create. Like that's the whole reason why I wanted to smoke, because I got to write something, or I want to think of a recipe, or, you know, or put together a video or something like that. But then my body also might be a little bit sore. So by making, like having an infused breakfast, let's say, like one of the things, friends, that I'm going to be doing soon is I want to infuse maple syrup so
Mhm.
that I can have, you know, my infused waffles, pancakes, etc. And the idea is not to get me so heavily dosed so that I can't function throughout the day. It's to work along with the other ways that I consume, because I do like to drink it. I take sprays sometimes. Like I like to do a lot of different things. So.
Yes, yes, yes. And there's so many things in what you said, especially the difference between cooking with cannabis and then the edibles you might be able to purchase. You know, cooking with cannabis definitely takes some research and developing and being able to add it into the foods that you like to eat, and incorporate it properly, and find out your right dosing and stuff like that. That takes time. But I know there's some people who are unable to, you know, do that type of work, and they may need edible, and they don't want it to taste so medicinal, so they may go to a dispensary or a producer and get something in high dosage, because they're dealing with an enormous amount of chronic pain or some type of terminal illness where they need the high dose, because edibles to me is the longest lasting
Oh,
effective
100%.
way to consume, right?
100%. 100%. And that's the beauty of it. I should interject because in Canada, in the legal market, the maximum amount of THC in an edible is actually 10 milligrams. Yeah, there are other products on the market that fall like, you know, it's like edible adjacent, kind of like mint strips or lozenges or things like that, where you might be able to get like a whole package of 100 milligrams because each piece is 10 milligrams.
Mhm.
But theory, like for the most part, edibles are a maximum of 10 milligrams per package. So if
Yes.
there are like 5 gummies in there, that means that each gummy is only 2 milligrams per. And
Wow,
the
wow. That's good to know.
idea, yeah, and and now I get it because I've worked in dispensaries as well, both before legalization and then after, and I understand that back to that endocannabinoid system is that people who have never touched the plant before, let's say they're 39, 52, whatever, even, younger, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But like they never touched the plant before. I have served customers that would come back and say a 2 milligram gummy really affected them.
Yes. I mean, it can affect me too, and
Yeah.
depending on where I'm at, setting,
That
obviously,
part
and
too.
what it is that, I even said the time of the month,
Right.
if my tolerance is lower, during a
Exactly.
certain time of the month, I'm starting to be able to notice that because of the way I track my consumption. And
Yes.
so you're right, the legal market or the rec,
Yeah.
even here in Connecticut, you are not able to get past a certain amount of milligrams in your edible. This is
Right.
true. But
Right.
for medicinal patients and those who
Yes.
hold the license, you can get a higher dosage. Um,
And that is important to me too, that medical patients do have access to higher doses because number one, cannabis is not cheap. Like these products are not cheap, right? And so if somebody is, battling cancer, just like uh, um, illnesses that require high doses of THC, I think it's important to have products available where it's already in there so that somebody's not buying 10 packages of this and like who has the ability to afford all of that, you
yes,
know?
yes. And so even with learning through faded living and the lifestyle with the workshops, or even through my own business, Native Nubian Wellness, you can learn how to also create cannabis dishes, right? But also
Exactly.
make it cost effective because we know
Exactly.
it costs. It's not
Right.
free. Number
Yeah.
one, most of these places, unless you're growing it yourself, and
Yes.
if you don't have access to growing it yourself, it's hard to find compassionate programs that provide or gift cannabis, and then it's not covered by insurances,
Right.
even though it's prescribed by a medical provider. So you want to make it cost effective, and oftentimes you can't really pay $27 for two cookies, you know.
That's the thing. Constantly, like when you have to use
Right,
this like several times a day because you
right,
have flare-ups several times a day, or sometimes, like you said, when we're on our moon cycle, like especially women who face endometriosis, like that type of the month can be like extremely an uncomfortable type of the month, so
right,
of course you're going to need an intense amount of THC at that time. So yeah, I do try to show people how to do it so that they can stretch their dollar. In Canada, we do have the ability, even through the recreational market, to grow for plants, I believe. So it is then on top of that, based on like if you're renting or not, you have to also think of that because not all spaces where you are a renter will
right,
allow that. But if you own your own space, you do have the ability to grow for plants. And then for medical patients, they have the ability to apply to grow even more than that. So I recommend people
that,
to learn how to grow. I've done it once a few years ago. I've learned, and that was the first time, and I've learned with the plant is that it is extremely sensitive. She's a sensitive girl. I mean, she is the feminine, but I was moving throughout the process, and because I moved, I found that the plants did differently after I moved, and they didn't do as well as if I had been staying in the same place. So then the next year I knew I was going to move, so I didn't even bother to,
right, right,
because I just knew
right.
that
She
I
needs
wasn't.
pampering,
She
right.
does. She's not, let me tell you, friends, I was not always a person with a green thumb, right? And even now I'm learning. I'm embracing the fact that all things can be learned, right? Like, so because I used to be like, I can't grow anything. I'm da da da. And I'm like, yeah, of course, if you keep telling yourself you can't do something, the universe is going to give you exactly that. So I changed the narrative and started to
Right,
say that I'm learning and all of the things. So as I started to keep my house plants alive, I thought, oh, I can grow a cannabis plant. How difficult can it be? And it can be super simple, to be very honest with you, because back in the day, all they used to, I mean, they didn't do all the things that we're doing now, right?
right,
So it can be grown simply, but it is sensitive, where the more love and attention and connection that you make with it, the better It
Right,
is,
right. I was told, and I can't wait to really be able to dive into that part of building that type of symbiosis and synergy with the plant, so it understands uh who it's providing for. You know what I mean? That type, right? Because we know these are living beings, you know.
exactly.
So so we want to treat it as such. And yeah, I'm excited to really dive in a little bit more about your journey. What
Yeah.
called you to cannabis? And then we can go into all the things that you love to make and talk about the podcast. So what called you to cannabis?
So it was, I think, gosh, it's this year will be 10 years since I had this really random car accident. It was kind of like a little bit of a freak accident, so to speak. But I walked away with soft tissue injuries. So that was, I'm thankful to be alive, but during the beginning, especially in those first 5 years of the accident, like it was quite painful, right? I don't even think it's fully 10 years. It's going to be 8 years, sorry. Because then I'm like, that doesn't make sense. So it'll be 8 years this year. But needless to say, like when I had the car accident, I had to take something to help with the pain. That was just something I had to do. And I knew at that point I didn't want to take opioids. Like I wasn't even offered it other
Mhm.
than Tylenol threes type of thing, but I knew just with the way that it I felt and just the pain I was going through that I needed something to comfort me throughout the healing process. And
Right.
also the type of line of work that I was doing then is that I was a food entrepreneur at the time. I was doing something different, doing a food, I had a food business that was like more Jamaican fusion type stuff. I was in an indoor farmers market. So I was on my feet all the time on concrete. So I needed something to kind of help with my body when it was feeling sore and painful and all of that. And we have had a medical cannabis program in Canada since I think 2000 or 2002. So it was known that there was the ability to become a medical cannabis patient and then order your cannabis and be able to use that to support. So I was living in a part of the country where I was able to go to a clinic that had doctors that specifically gave you recommendations because they didn't want to call them prescriptions, but they gave you recommendations for cannabis. And I was able to get cannabis, order it through a licensed producer, and have it delivered to my door. And I started to use that for my healing. And I was like very, very familiar with the plant. But I had always used it more in the recreational mindset. And then it was around the time of the accident that I realized, like, oh, cannabis, all cannabis use is therapeutic use because even when you're trying to have a good time, like that is therapy for you. That is like creating balance for you, right? So that's when I realized, like, oh, this is great. And around the time of um the accident is when they were talking about legalization and the fact that legalization was on the recreational side was going to happen in the country. So then that's when I was like, oh, okay, legalization is happening. This plan is doing such wonders for me. Like I appreciated it even more because of the accident and what it was doing for me and how it
Mhm.
was benefiting me. And I wanted to play in the industry. I wanted to be a part of it when legalization actually happened. And I was noticing that a lot of the big players that were, really like, being talked about and, they were going to be making their ways in this industry were cis white men. There wasn't a lot of diversity at all. Like it was really that those were the players in the game. And I was like, this is an industry that's going to be brand spanking new. Nobody really, yeah, we have areas of the country, specifically where I live, that had what they called a gray market. So there was
Right.
dispensaries like the city allowed for it to operate and blah blah blah. But across the country, it wasn't really like that we had, this recreational industry and all of that. And I literally wanted to play a role in it. And once legalization came to be, I or a little bit before, I moved from where I was living to where I'm living now, to Vancouver. Because Vancouver was and still is, in my mind, like the mecca of cannabis, right? Like it was, because they had the gray market. I think their gray market was around for like 10 years, if not a little longer, maybe even as long as the medical market. So this is a city that really understood um the industry, the plant, selling it, all of that stuff. And I wanted to be around the folks that have been doing it for a while. And so that's what I did. And I didn't think I was gonna actually incorporate food at first. I didn't know what I was gonna do, but I didn't think food was gonna be the thing. But what happened was I was bumping into people from the city I used to live in, and they were asking me about when I was gonna do food and when I was going to do food in the city. And so I'm like, okay, well, the universe is clearly saying that I'm still meant to do food, to cook food, but I knew that I couldn't cook it in the capacity that I used to. I didn't want to do festivals and large events and things. Like my body just isn't, even with cannabis. Like I love cannabis for so many things. I'm going to segue real quick. I love it for so many things because when I consume it for pain, it doesn't erase the pain. It
Mm,
just masks the pain and numbs it a bit. So you still know the pain is there, but like so that you don't overexert yourself, but at the same time, it's not like erased. And so because it wasn't erased, I knew I didn't want to do food in the way that I was doing it before.
right.
And uh then I just started to learn about cooking with it through meeting people who already did it in the city and also through online. And that's how I meshed what I used to do with my love of the plant. And
Right.
then that's kind of how the cooking with cannabis came to be. And then I wanted to do dinner parties, which I did. I launched a series called Faded Feast because I had done some collaborations with other folks in the cannabis space. But I decided I wanted to do like my own thing, call them Faded Feast. And then I did my first one in February of 2020. And then COVID came in March.
Oh, wow. Right.
And then that was that. And I was working for a cannabis company at the while I was, um, launching like my endeavors. And so I was grateful to have a job during COVID, right? So I was grateful to have a job. The dinner parties weren't a thing, but Faded Living um became an idea of mine during COVID when I realized that, okay, if I can't really do dinner parties, because at the time in the beginning stages of COVID, like we didn't know what was going to go on. We didn't know,
Mhm.
like, once we knew that this was not going to be ending in 6 weeks, we kind of then didn't know, like, is this going to be like the new thing or what, right? So I realized, like, okay, I'm going to have to maybe shift, and maybe dinner parties are not going to be something on the horizon right now, but what else can I do since we were doing everything virtually? And that's when the cooking with cannabis workshops, I'd
Yeah.
done some, like I'd done some cooking demos in person before COVID with other like collaborative events with people. But this is something that I thought, okay, I can actually do and present to people
Yeah.
online. So
That's
definitely in the first year of, the business, it was heavy on the workshop type thing. So I rolled out quite a few workshops, an intro to cooking with cannabis. I did a workshop on infusing your favorite cooking oils. So we kind of talked about the different types of oils and how each one is, what's the benefits of each one. Like
right.
coconut oil is like, really, really amazing for so many reasons because it's great for vegans. I call it like the most versatile oil because it's a topical as well as great for cooking with. A lot of people, I love to put like coconut oil in my hair. Like I just love
Yeah.
it on my skin. Like,
It's
I know a lot of people don't love to use it on their skin, but I love
right.
coconut oil on my
Right.
skin.
For me,
So
I can't use it on my skin because for some reason I break out, but it's definitely
mm,
antibacterial and great
yeah,
for.
exactly.
So I use that to help rid myself and restore my health from a gut bacteria. It was
Look at
heavy
that. It's
oils.
great for like your teeth, like teeth pulling with coconut. Like
Yes,
it's just
oh
so,
yes, oil pulling.
yeah, it's so good. So I did a workshop just kind of talking about like different oils and what the benefits of working with them is. And then I did another series on cooking with cannabis and terpenes, where we would talk about one specific terpene and the benefits of that terpene, and then
Yes,
talk about cultivars that are high in that terpene. And then I would give you like a recipe that was would complement the terpene. So
yes. I
yeah,
love
that
that.
would be fun. Yeah.
I love that because, some people will say, people are saying, oh, well, when you cook with cannabis, the terpenes aren't in there. And I've noticed in my infusions that the terpenes still present. I can still taste the flavor of the
Hmm.
terpene in
Absolutely.
certain cultivars. So not every terpene in that cultivar, but there's certain that still stand out and are
Absolutely.
present. And I've noticed that, infusing white widow versus infusing like grape ape or something like that are two different flavors. I taste two
Yes.
different things.
Yes.
So, like you said, you can taste the cannabis in there, for those who like it.
Yeah.
You can taste it in there, and I like to be able to taste the different flavors
Yeah, me
and the
too. I
flavors,
like,
come from
yeah.
the terpenes.
Absolutely. I love that, as well as because I love working with ingredients, and to me, like, cannabis is still a herb as well.
Yeah,
Like, that's what it is to me. So I'm utilizing it as a herb,
right,
and there are, like, if you have copious amounts of cannabis, like, there's lots of things you can do with the plant cooking wise. For people who have less access, then I do recommend things like to maybe infuse sauces and dressings and things of that nature more, so that you maximize all the cannabinoids. You're not burning things off, and you can really get all the benefits of it. But if you are growing and you have access on access on access, I
right.
say do it all.
You
I
can have
say
a
buy
whole
with it.
cabinet
You,
full.
why not? I mean, what do you have to lose? It's all going to be beneficial. Like, if you have access, and you especially if you grow, like, your return on growing X number of plants can be quite a lot, so that you can really play around with it and see what works, and the effects that you get. But of course, for somebody who is limited and just wants to try it out, then yes, of course, I recommend like not cooking with high heat, because you're going to burn off a lot of the cannabinoids on there, and
Right.
then that's wasting all the money that you put into it. And not just the money, but also, let's not forget, your time is currency too, right? Like, your energy that you've put into creating that dish. And if you're not going to get all the benefits in terms of that you need from it, then yeah, I do always recommend like doing low heat or no heat recipes, so that you can.
Yes, 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 I agree. I agree. And learning how I love that you speak to it as an herb because it is. And
Mhm.
then when you are in the world of herbalism and you understand how to create infusions with all the herbs, whether it's hot or cold, and how to preserve, like you said, those terpenes, because the terpenes exist in all the other herbs as well.
Exactly. It exists in so many things. And that's one of the reasons, like, I noticed for us in Canada, one of the hurdles and challenges that we have for all of us that are cannabis entrepreneurs, whether you are in the US or in Canada, is trying to promote yourself online or share information. And because of many of these social media platforms are actually US owned, and the fact that it's not federally legal, we, in many cases, face potentially losing our accounts and being banned and things of that
Yes.
nature. So it's kind of hard to share stuff. So that's kind of why I took a little bit of shift with the business to say that we're a herbal lifestyle company, so
Yeah.
that we talk about other herbs. I mean, cannabis is my favorite herb, so I'm
Right,
gonna
right,
keep it
right,
real. But I will talk about lavender, or I will talk
right.
about, thyme, or I will just talk about other herbs as well, to let people know that if you're not afraid of thyme, or you're not afraid of oregano or basil or lavender or mugwort or so many other beneficial
Yes.
herbs out there, then you don't have to be so fearful of cannabis. Like, as much control that you have, that you put for yourself with the other herbs that you work with, you can do the same with cannabis as well.
Right, right. And you don't have to worry about, I'm gonna get so high because there's ways to consume where the euphoric effect
Yes,
isn't present, but you're still getting the medicinal or therapeutic benefits. So
absolutely.
I agree. But it's educational.
Yes.
being able to provide that education. And I just love the workshops. We should definitely collab on an international
Yes.
one, and swap recipes
Yes, I
and
would love
have
that.
some real fun, have some real
Yes,
fun.
I would absolutely love that. I feel like the workshops were put on hiatus for a little bit because the minute that um things started opening up again and people started be able to go out and be in person, um that part of the business kind of like went on a little bit of a hold, but I really see value in the workshops. I think it's really important to be able to just learn how to do things. And I actually teach people how to create like, you know, oil using 3.5 grams, right? So that they can just go into the just to start. It doesn't have to be that you need to use an ounce
No,
to make your oil, right? Like, so I teach them how to do it. I give you, the a calculation based on working with 1 cup, because we're cooking in our homes. We're not making these large, we're not feeding a village,
right,
right? Like
right.
we're
You're
just
not a
literally,
caterer.
no, you're just feeding yourself or, you and your partner or something, right? Like, so it's really low key. So I try to teach you how to work with 1 cup so that you can get the calculation so that you know how much is in a tablespoon, because
Yes,
that's how most of us dose, right? We dose with adding 1 tablespoon to whatever it is that we're doing so that we can understand how that works. And I also put the disclaimer, as always, we are working out of our home kitchens. Everybody's oven is going to have a level of heat intensity different than another, oven. So always know that there's room for error. And this is just like, we're giving you like something that is like better than a guesstimate, it's close, but
right.
it's not perfect, right? Like
Right,
it's,
and it's informational and
yeah,
educational. We are
exactly.
not medical providers, and
Not medical provider. Exactly.
right,
Mhm.
and make sure that you know the laws in the area that you're consuming.
Exactly.
Yes, we definitely put all of that out prior to beginning.
Yeah.
But for those, we want to make sure that people are able to consume it safely and
Mhm.
effectively.
But when
When
you work with less, the chances are you can have a better experience, especially if it's your first time, than
yeah,
you work with too much. I mean, I'm thankful, and I know you are, that there are things that you can do to help to alleviate feeling too high or greening out and things like that. Like, if you're consuming alcohol and you are getting too drunk, like there's not a lot of things that you can do to like within 30 minutes you're going to feel better, or within an hour you're going to feel better. You kind of just like have to ride it out, even if you have it come out of your system by like throwing up or something. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to feel better. But like with cannabis, you can literally utilize CBD, or even like certain terpenes like caryophyllene black in the black pepper, that it's been
yeah,
helpful to people to sniff that, or chew on peppercorns if they're not feeling well, or have a lemon slice because of the limonene and that terpene that's in there, or drink orange juice. Like there are some things that you
right.
can do. Um, but essentially, even if the most smallest amount affects you, like there are, always know that there are things that you can do. And something as simple as sleeping,
Mm-hmm.
even just that alone, you will wake up
Yes.
feeling
Yes.
fresh, not
And
groggy, not
that
whatever,
you're going to be okay. You know,
Yeah.
so you don't have to panic or, feel anxious about it. Like you said, there's a number of ways that you can balance out the effect if you feel like you've had too much. But I'm finding that there's some people who are high in tolerance, because they consume heavily through inhalation, that they're saying that the edibles, and no matter like how high the dose, is not working for
It's
them.
not working. I know. I've heard that on many, many levels. And I think that that's why I uh did the terpenes kind of series for a bit, because I don't know if you've heard this. I know that it actually has um increased the intensity for me, but like I have infused, let's say, a mango smoothie, right? And mango has myrcene. That is
Mhm.
the terpene that's there. And sometimes I'll infuse it with a cultivar that actually is high in myrcene, but sometimes it's just with another cultivar.
Right.
And I find that like when I have had a mango smoothie, like the effects is more potent than if I were to infuse just like a banana smoothie or something, right? So I find that with people who don't have, like, they just don't have a tolerance, I always recommend like trying to consume it with also a terpene created recipe type of thing to see
Right,
if the terpene can actually even activate it even more. And sometimes that can help. But again, we all have our own different
yeah.
endocannabinoid system, and some people it just doesn't affect them.
Right, right. Oftentimes I wind up asking if they consume alcohol. You know,
Mm,
that's that can be something that affects your ability to absorb because
right,
of the liver. Let's be clear what
right.
happens when you eat an edible and what happens to the THC after it's processed through your digestive system and goes through the liver. So if your liver is not really in the best
Yeah, if it's not the strongest.
right, as well as did you consume it on an empty stomach? Oftentimes you have to have an empty stomach to really, for those who have that high tolerance, I would take a lower dose on an empty stomach and then see,
And
you
then
know,
see.
if it's working. But yeah, if you're combining alcohol along with, you may have to do some detoxifying first before
Exactly.
you dive into the edible arena. you
And
know,
I've just learned with the plant that it's just something that you have to do a lot of trial and error,
yes.
right? You literally, it's not and that's not the easiest thing for people because we are really kind of conditioned to do what is presented to us,
Mhm.
right? As opposed to like figuring out what really works for us individually.
Right.
Right?
Right, exactly. And so, yes, trial and error. And then, it can be discouraging to some because most of us
They
want the
want the instant. I know.
right,
Yeah.
right. You want instant gratification, you want the quick fix, and the thing is, like you said, when you're consuming, you want to understand that it is going to be individual to you and your needs, your body, and your intention, you know.
And your intention. I think that's the thing that people also fail to forget that yes, there are the indica sativa hybrid, all that kind of stuff. There is that talk, but to be honest, I can make an indica do whatever it wants, I want it to do, and I can make a sativa do whatever you know what I mean? Like there's like if I take an indica and I want to, I'm going out for a walk and I'm not falling asleep as I'm walking. It's energizing me. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of energizing indicas out there, right? Like there's a lot of hazes are in many cases considered under the sativa, you know what I mean? And a lot of haze is can be very like sedating,
Yes. Yes.
so it's like at the end of the day, it is your intention, in my personal opinion. It is like, what do I want it to do before I consume? Like, and every time that I consume, it's usually for some specific reason, right? Like it's not, sometimes it's just for no reason at all, and that's cool too. But a lot of times it's for like if my morning, like I started the day with a joint. So when I start the day like that, like I'm going out for a walk, I'm getting that fresh air, like it's like my rolling it off for the day, like it's
Right.
like that's what that first joint is that's the intent of it. But my end of day joint could be the same exact cultivar, but
Mhm.
now I want to go to sleep. So
Mhm.
now this is going to get me sedated because I'm telling it what I want. I'm telling her what I want her to create
Yes,
for me.
yes.
Yeah.
And she's going to give you what your body needs and what you need at the
100%.
time of consumption, So that's the beauty of really, like you said, the relationship you build with the plant. And also, just like if we're supplementing, so if your ECS is deficient in an area where the plant comes in and supplements, that's what it's going to do at the time. And you have to tap into what your body needs. And that really comes with self care, like intentional self care.
Exactly. Self-care, self-awareness. And I know that um over the past, even within 10 years, there's been that shift where we are taking more of that thought process. We do have more of that mentality. Like, I'm in my 40s, so I have come from a time where that's not the way we were thinking.
No,
I was TV raised, man. Like we were like sedated in many different ways, really, but now I found that within the last 10 years, like a lot of people are taking control of their own lives and what works, and realizing that something that might be blanket was a blanket solution for everyone, it doesn't actually work for everybody.
no, 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 and especially like you said, for Black women, now we're becoming more intentional and aware about caring for ourselves because we give so much of ourselves, and so much
Absolutely.
has been taken, and so now, we want to pour back into ourselves, and cannabis is a tool to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
And so I definitely invite anyone who's interested to contact us you know,
Yes,
contact us and reach out. And we're more than happy to help and guide
100%.
and give you some insight into what it is that you're curious about if you've never consumed. But before
100%.
we go, I want to definitely dive into Faded Living podcast and how that
Yes,
came into fruition. And then
yes.
let us know how we can contact you, reach out, connect, and support. Where does your business need support?
Absolutely. Okay, so Faded Living and Friends, this podcast is now officially on season 3. Takesha, thank you so much. You also have been a guest on my podcast. I am rolling out Takesha's episode is going to be actually rolled out on
Oh,
Friday.
thank
This
you.
Friday. So I'm so grateful. But I started this podcast essentially to be a space for diverse voices to share what we do in the industry. Um, Again, like I mentioned, when I started the business, it was around like COVID times kind of thing. Legalization in this country happened in 2018, so I kind of started the business around 2020, 2021, around there. So we're still fresh in terms of the legalization state, but the demographic of folks that are in the space are now becoming more diverse, and I wanted to showcase a platform for all folks, right? So I speak to everybody. But what I've learned is that it is like, if I looked at, the number of people, I think I've now chatted with about like 52 people already. Like it is a diverse group of folks, and I think that that's really cool to show people, and not just in Canada. So like, as like I spoke with you, I wanted to show that there is just a lot of amazing people doing amazing things in the space. I also wanted to show people who are not familiar with the cannabis space how normal cannabis entrepreneurs and consumers really are, how much magic we have on, how self-sufficient we are, how much we persevere through, because it's not an easy industry to try to build a name for yourself and to build a sustainable business in, right? So I want it to be a space to share those stories so that people, understand, like, we love this plant. Like we love this plant. And why do we love this plant when there are so many sometimes hurdles that all of us face, actually, regardless of your ethnicity? All of us face it because the stigma is still there, right? So regardless if I'm a white man who is launching a cannabis business, I'm still going to be faced with stigma. When
Mhm.
I try to go get a bank account, when I try to go, they don't care because it's the
Right.
plant that they don't like, so a lot of times they don't care. So I want it to be a space for new folks who don't know anything about the plant to hear about us, and then for people who are in the space to get inspiration, because sometimes it's not, even in the summertime, I was like not certain if I wanted to, how long I wanted to stay in the space, because it can be so slow moving. It can be fast moving slow, but it can be slow as molasses. Like you're just kind of like uncertain. And every time I listen or record an episode, I do get inspired. I do get inspired by people. I do get inspired. So that is one of the reasons why I launched that as well. And I think that this industry is hugely built on collaboration. And
Mhm.
so part of the podcast is my way of collaborating with people, because essentially, each episode we're cross promoting now,
Right.
like, so that to me is a way that's to me part of the culture, right? Is part of like showing that there's enough money to be made by us all.
Right, right. And I love that because the plant is collaborative
It
with all the
is.
different terpenes and so many different
Yes.
that work together in synergy to bring balance and whatever it is you're desiring when you
Absolutely.
consume. So, the like you said, the space, the community, the industry should reflect that if you're
Mhm.
consuming it right. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what's going on, but if you're consuming it right. So,
Right.
how can we reach out and how can we listen in on your podcast? Thank you again for having me on. I appreciate that. Like you said,
Likewise.
cross promote. If you do know any other Black women in the space that would love
I'll
to
hook
come
you up.
on and connect, please share. I love to connect with someone from the continent, the motherland,
Yes.
from the UK, so that's my hope to start really reaching different areas.
Yes, reach all. I have some folks that I'm going to be connecting with you with, absolutely. And for those who want to connect with me, it's fatedliving.com is my website, so that's a great place to start. I am lucky enough to have been able to snag the @fatedliving handle on all social media platforms. So @fatedliving, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Facebook just by putting that in. You're definitely going to be able to find me on all those spaces. And then also, even in terms of like reaching me out through email, info@fatedliving.com is the best way to reach me. But I'm always here to answer any questions, because in my personal opinion, I feel like if every adult, let's just, preface, every adult had a little THC in their system, the vibrational level of this planet would be off the chain. So
Okay.
if you have any questions, I'm always here to like help you. And I also know, and I also want to preface before we go, like, I know that cannabis isn't for everybody. And that's why it's great to, reach out to those who have some, if you have any questions, and also to start low, like to start with a low dose just to see if it does work for you, rather than jumping into the deep end type of thing, right? Like start low and just kind of see, does this work? How does this feel for you? And let's not forget, there is CBD, where CBD has all of its benefits. And now we're getting other cannabinoids, CBN, CBG, like there's just so many other cannabinoids that are out there that THC doesn't necessarily have to be your thing,
Right.
right? That you could get a lot of benefits from the other cannabinoids as well.
Yes, I agree. So you don't have to jump in and be a daredevil. You don't have
No,
to,
I mean, I love it, but
right,
you don't have to.
right, right. You don't have to be succumb to peer pressure and amongst your friends and eat
Yeah,
the scary high dose edible or take more tokes than you desire
have
in
to,
your sesh.
exactly.
Right, right. You can say and treat it like you said. Come to it as any other plant medicine
That's
that
it.
you would consume. You would first start low and see how it
Absolutely.
works with you before you
Absolutely.
dive in anymore. And all of Nicole's socials and website info will be in the description along with her bio. So please reach out. How can you be supported in this space? Is there anything that you're seeking specifically right now and any events you have coming up?
So I don't have any events yet. I am going to be rolling out a workshop. I had wanted to do it at the end of this month, but I am going to push it to next month. So stay tuned for information on that. I do have apparel, and I created a line for Black History Month last year called the Faded in Black and Faded Ally hoodies and t-shirts that I have. It's for the Faded in Black 365 collection, because we are black and beautiful 365 days out of the year. So but for those who are inclined to support a black business during Black History Month, feel free to stop by my shop. Check out there are other branded hoodies and t-shirts as well, but especially for this time of the month, if you want to be faded in black, check it out. Get yourself a t-shirt, a hoodie, you know what I mean? We got crop hoodies too. So we got all for the girls and the boys and the theys, you know what I mean? So all of the things. And yeah, definitely check out for the workshop that will be coming up. I'm going to do that virtual. And then moving forward, I would love to do more collaborative workshops as well, because I think that as much as we are out in these streets, the virtual component of life is still going to be a big thing. So I
Yes.
want to reactivate that, because I still think a lot of people are not necessarily as comfortable being out in loud crowds and doing all of those things yet, and may never, and I think that it's important to offer entertainment, educational opportunities online as well as in person. So yeah, stay connected. Instagram is probably one of the spaces that I post a lot of what I do and what will be happening first. And then you'll see it on some of the other channels. So always stay connected at Faded Living on Insta.
Yes, thank you so much. And of course, we'll have to have you back. Like
Yes.
you said, a collaborative effort workshop
Yes.
would be great. You were international, so we can make sure that it gets out across the board for
Yes.
everyone to be able to participate, because it'll be virtual. And
Absolutely.
again, and just to come onto the platform and connect with the other women in the community
I
that's
would
been
love.
featured as well. You're more than open to contacting them to participate and be on the Faded Living and Family
Yay.
podcast. I'm quite sure they would love to
Yes, I would
connect
love
with
that,
you.
because I'm always looking for new folks to share stories. And I forgot to mention that one of the easiest ways to listen to the podcast is to hit it up on Spotify, because
That's
that's where
right.
all the folks are on the Spotify. So I mean, you can find it on other spots as well, but Spotify is definitely a
Yes.
spot.
Yes, and I'll surely be sharing once it drops. So I appreciate you again for that time and that special episode. And peace, love, and light, everyone. If you are a Black woman who consumes cannabis for your health and well being, you are an entrepreneur in the space, or you're an employee and you want to share your story, please reach out to me so we can get you featured. And again, Necole, I appreciate your time. Reach out to her at fadedliving.com. You can reach out to me at nativenubian.com. And until next time, peace and love, everyone.
Bye.